Hello everyone, welcome to Back to the Box Office, the show where we compare movies from two different eras, the biggest hits of today and the biggest hits of the year 1999. Today's episode, we're going to be looking at John Wick 3, which is number one at the box office this past weekend, and the movie that was number one the same weekend 20 years ago, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. My name is Danny. I'm joined today by Marcus.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
All right, Marcus, you want to get into the numbers?
Yeah, so I'll just jump right into them. So, John Wick 3 was released on May 20th. It was May 17th. It had a budget of $55 million. Its opening weekend was $56 million. It opened at 3,800 theaters, and per theater it made an average of $14,700. And as of right now, its worldwide gross is 63.2% domestic. So basically, the bulk of the money that it's made has been domestic. Now, as far as Episode 1, that was released May 19th, 1999. And I know it's crazy to think that film is 20 years old now. It opened at $64 million. It opened at 3,100 theaters. It was in theaters until February of 2000, so that's a little bit interesting. And for the film, for Episode 1, because there's been a couple different re-releases, it's probably pushed the number up a little bit higher than it was on its actual initial run. But as of right now, the movie has made over $1 billion worldwide. 474 million of that was domestic, and its domestic percentage of its total gross is 46.2%. It had a budget of $115 million, and it should also be noted that it was the biggest film of 1999 by kind of a big margin, actually. The number 2 film might actually surprise some of you guys. And it made an average of $21,000 per theater. So now that we got a lot of those numbers out of the way, I guess.
Wait a second. What was the number 2 film?
Number 2 film of that year was The Sixth Sense.
Oh, wow.
With $670 million.
That is a surprise.
I know that. Isn't that a crazy thought to think that the 2 biggest films in 1999? I mean, it makes sense for Star Wars.
Yeah, no, it does. They're just so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Sixth. I remember that being a phenomenon. But we're not here to talk about that today.
Yeah,
we'll get there eventually.
That will be eventually.
Yeah.
So, I guess what are some of the numbers that you think really stand out to you about those movies?
I want to know what you think. How much of that $115 million budget for Episode 1 is Jar Jar Binks?
Ooh.
Wasn't he...
Jar Jar Binks alone?
Yeah, I feel like there was... I mean, Jar Jar Binks being, one of the first kind of all-digital...
I think he
characters
was the
like
first.
that. I think we talked about that a little bit. Was it last week or a couple weeks ago? But
I think he might have been for a character that was in a film for as many minutes as he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Man, if I had to guess, I don't know. I'd probably say the whole digital budget for the film, I feel like at least had to be 20 to 30 million, right?
I mean, that's I don't know.
Oh.
Totally speculative. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the crazy thing is too is that obviously a lot of people look back at Episode 1 and that's the thing they hate most is Jar Jar Binks. But I feel like from a technological standpoint, I mean, I don't really like the character, don't get me wrong, but from a technological standpoint, he actually was kind of a breakthrough character in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the movie it gets a lot of flack, I think, sometimes unnecessarily, so we'll probably get into that. But I think it's interesting looking at these two movies this week, because oftentimes on this podcast we'll talk about how movies from 1999 or other years in the 90s that we've looked at wouldn't necessarily translate to today or wouldn't come out today because they don't make those kind of movies anymore. And in this week, it's the opposite, right? We have a Star Wars movie, this big franchise IP film coming out in 99, and we have this really just a culmination of every great late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s like action movie tropes, right down to the stars of the movie being like Halle Berry and Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne and all these actors who had their apex really in the 90s. And so I think it's fascinating to be looking at these two films today side by side.
I mean, I was thinking that same thing with Lawrence Fishburne and Halle Berry. I was like, wow, like they are really a blast from the past and film. I mean, I know Lawrence Fishburne's in Blackish and he's been in other movies, but like an action role like this, the last action film I could think of before John Wick 2 that he was in was probably Mission Impossible 3. And in that, he doesn't do anything. Like, he's just the chief.
Yeah.
Like, he's not fighting or doing anything.
I think it's really interesting. And I mean, Keanu Reeves himself, he had a real big lull there after the Matrix trilogy ended. What did he didn't really do anything. He did like Constantine,
he did Constantine and The Day There Stood Still, and
really he did like the Ronin. Lake House and Ronin 47, and he was just on his way. I feel like he was going to where sort of maybe Nicolas Cage is now, where you just see I pop on Netflix and I see, oh, there's a Nicolas Cage movie. I've never heard of it, never seen a trailer for it. It's just out, just straight to VOD. I feel like Keanu Reeves could have gone there, but then John Wick came out of nowhere, and it totally revived his career. And this renaissance, this renaissance is pretty. I feel like it's unprecedented because I can't remember an actor who's had such a resurgence. Yeah. I mean, John Wick took down Endgame.
John Wick. You're totally right. I mean, John Wick 1, I think it opened at like 14 million.
Yeah.
John Wick 2 was like almost 30 million, and this one was 55 million. I mean, John Wick 3 opened at the same amount of money as like Mission Impossible 6. Yeah. On a budget that was like $55 million budget.
It's crazy. I mean, they do a lot with a little budget. Yeah. It's because it's just so. I mean, I love the movie. And I'm new to the John Wick universe. New as in I just watched all 3 of them this week last week before seeing the third one, and I watched the first one on, I think it was Wednesday night, and I wasn't
I didn't love the first.
I wasn't that crazy about it. I thought, okay, this is fine. I like the whole. It's a simple story. I like a simple revenge action movie, and there were some really fantastic action scenes in it. But then I thought, after he does avenge the guy who actually killed his dog, who I don't remember the actor's name, but he plays in Game of Thrones. He plays Theon Greyjoy. Anyways, after that, I feel like it was a little anticlimactic, and so I wasn't blown away by it. The second one, I thought it was fantastic.
I love the second. But the second was my favorite one.
And I watched it. I started it late on Friday night, and then early Sunday, I fell asleep. So early Sunday, I was like, I gotta finish it, but I had somewhere to go, so I'm like rushing to finish this movie. So right as I'm leaving the door is the scene in the Central Park, the last scene when Ian McShane makes everyone stops, all the assassins, and then so I actually missed the very final moment when John Wick starts to run, but I kind of assumed that was where it ended, and then a few hours later I was in the third one, and,
and he's still running.
Yeah, and so for this reason though, like I'm thinking back on my experience watching the third one, and I had a fantastic time in the theater, but the second and third movies to me are just a big blur because I watched them in such close proximity to one another. Yeah, I honestly can't tell you. I was thinking of scenes today while driving, and I'm like, oh, that was the second one. I thought it was the third one. It happened in the second one. It's interesting.
No, I totally get you there. I mean, I love the second one. Like I remember watching the first one. I tried to watch it with Matt. We tried to watch it once, and we actually left. Yeah. Right before he digs up his old weapons under the concrete with the hammer. We left right during that. And then we ended up paying to see it like a month later. So I was like, okay, this is pretty good. Like I kind of didn't like the fact they killed Willem Dafoe. I forgot he was in the first one. Then when they kill him, I was like, oh, okay. And the second one, it blew. I love the second one. I thought it really blew me away. You could see the bigger budget. You could see
they did
the
a lot more.
lore was built up so much more. And the third one, I really like the third one a lot too. I feel like the second one was again probably a little better, but I don't know.
It's interesting you say that you saw it again a month later. I think that maybe not, but I think that was probably driven by word of mouth. And
it was totally driven by word of mouth.
And I think that's what's interesting about this in terms of its box office. We're at now the third movie. It's the biggest of all the 3. And the biggest budget, but not by much. But I think this whole franchise is just built on word of mouth and people. It's just a really well-made action movie, the likes of which they don't necessarily make anymore. There's not a ton of, there's a good amount of CG obviously, but it's not like it's a primary emphasis of the movie. And it really is a throwback in every sense of the word. And the fact that it's doing so well in 2019, it makes me happy.
Do you think that the John Wick trilogy is the best trilogy that's come out this decade for the 2010s? I was thinking about that the other day.
What else is there? Well, when did the Dark Knight trilogy start? Oh, I guess that was in.
Well, only the Dark Knight Rises came out.
That's right. It was 2012.
And I know Hunger Games there was more than 3, but
I wouldn't even.
I was trying to think of what are the trilogies this decade. I don't even know what they really even are entirely. Like, I mean, like, well, if we're going by just strictly original trilogies this decade, like not based on any existing property, I think John Wick is the only one I can even think of that would even qualify.
Yeah, I can't think of one. When did... I'm thinking of movies, like I'm thinking of The Hangover. When did that come out, though? I think
the
that was
first
probably
one
like...
was like 09, I think.
Yeah, so it just misses the cut. Not that that would be better.
Yeah, but even, I mean, that one, I think most people dislike at least one or two of them.
There's got to be some, though, that we're not thinking of that, or at least would be in contention.
I mean, do you count the last three Mission Impossibles as being like its own trilogy?
No, because it's just part... I mean, it was the sixth installment, right? So it's
4, 5, and 6.
Although the last two had actual continuity, whereas the previous three didn't necessarily, or 4. So with the third one, with 7, I guess, although that won't come out until...
Is that like a year or two?
I think it's a year or two away, yeah. So, it might be. For our intents here, the Wickverse is definitely the trilogy to beat in the...
well, then they also announced, too, that the fourth one's coming out in 2 years.
Of course it is. And I can't wait.
I know, it was just like... I honestly thought, like... Well, I guess this is a spoiler part, but when Ian McShane, when he shoots him and he falls, I was like, wow, is that how they killed John Wick? Then he moves pretty quickly and you're like, oh, he's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, it really blew me off that they're going for 4 movies in this universe, and all 3 of the first movies take place over the course of what, like a month?
Yeah.
I think from the ending of the second film to the ending of the third film, I think they're only like 7 days or 8 days. Because Ian McShane's given that 7-day ultimatum.
That's right.
By that woman, the arbitrator.
Yeah.
And that was, and then like a week later, I think it's the shootout, right?
Yeah,
so, I mean,
it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny too, the whole thing about like the dog, like, he says that line in the movie, like, it's, like whatever, when Halle Berry's like, oh, he shot my dog, even though that dog survived.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, he's like, I understand, right?
Yeah,
Get you?
I get it. In his Keanu, I mean, no one can say the word "yeah" like Keanu Reeves. It's like, you working tonight? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, what a fantastically monotone delivery.
Yeah, you're totally right. Another thing I was thinking about for this movie too, like in anticipation of this review, is that, we did The Matrix, whatever it was, like a month or so ago, a month and a half ago. And it's just so funny to think that here we are, like, a month and a half later, we're talking about another action film with Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne back in them.
I know. This whole thing, I mean, this week's kind of like up on its head because of, Star Wars should be the movie we're talking about today, as in today's movie. Yeah. And, I mean, not even, obviously, John Wick is not going to make as much money as The Phantom Menace, not even close.
Nowhere near as
much. But, if, I don't know, it's more impressive to me what it's doing and its place in the current film landscape.
I mean, I feel like a lot more people have seen it than the box office reflects.
John Wick?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people have seen it like on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect. Well, I don't know if they show movies on cable anymore or if people watch them, but it's a perfect that kind of movie where you'll just like turn it on and it's just it was that scene. I'm gonna stop and watch it. I saw it on. Yeah, I got it on Amazon. I mean, I didn't see him in the theaters. The other two. Yeah, I don't know. My favorite part of the third one was really Boban Marjanovic. You saw him.
The Pistons player.
Well, he's on the 76ers now. He got traded from the
was
Clippers.
He on this Pistons at one point?
I don't know.
I remember him on the Spurs.
I don't know. I mean, he was on the Clippers for a while. So he got traded this year to the Sixers. I mean, yeah, he got like a book shoved in his mouth.
And then brutally killed.
It was fantastic. That might be the best NBA players cameo in a movie ever.
Yeah, that's because they told him to be a big, tall Eastern European guy.
Yeah.
And that's what he was.
There's a little bit of typecasting, but he was fantastic in it.
I didn't realize that the John Wick universe films are so Russian. But then I guess looking back, they're all very Russian.
You mean the character? I mean, yeah.
Well, the first two. Well, the first film, the main bad guy was a Russian, right?
Yeah.
And then John Wick speaks Russian, and then in this film, it turns out he's some kind of like Russian assassin that was trained by the Angelica Houston or whatever. Hudson?
Yeah, Houston. Yeah. Was she Russian? I don't remember.
I thought the whole thing was Russian. Like when they're like at the opera and they're talking and stuff, and his name is what was his name? Remember his Russian name?
I don't. I'm telling you, I have a difficult time separating 2 and 3.
It was a Vitch at the end.
Yeah, that's a good guess. Wick is actually John Wick is and Keanu Reeves is a cunning linguist, as it turns out. He speaks a lot of. He spoke Italian in the second movie. Does he do sign language in the second movie, or was that? Yeah, that was the second movie with Ruby Rose. Or
I think Keanu Reeves in real life, isn't he like Lebanese, or he was born in Lebanon or something like that?
I have no idea. He's an enigma to me.
I know his wife in real life died like years ago. So it's a really...
It's a tragic tragic story.
Yeah, I was thinking for the box office, like for this month, it's really weird that this month seems like a total blast from the 90s. Like you think about, like outside of Endgames, every big high-grossing film of this month will all be something that like at least I associate with the 90s. I mean, you have Aladdin.
Yeah.
You got like Keanu Reeves action films. You got Detective Pikachu, and then even another Godzilla film. Like, for whatever reason, I mean, I know Godzilla goes back to whatever the 50s or whatever, 1960, but like, when I think about an American Godzilla, I always think Matthew Broderick's,
right?
The one that came out.
The 98 gem of a film.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a testament to how cyclical things are. Like, they just, I mean, we have, the big comic book movies, really, those started in the 2000s, but
yeah.
Other than that, I feel like cinema has always been churning out these things. We've just taken a long break with everything being comic books, or then we got into the YA thing. I mean, it started with Harry Potter, and then everyone tried to jump on that with Twilight, or like you said, Hunger Games. You know, so I'm very glad that John Wick 3 is atop the box office this week, even if it's going to be short lived.
Yeah, because I mean, Aladdin's gonna outdo it this coming weekend for sure.
Yeah, but it's good counter programming, ironically, even though everything else is like kind of action heavy. But it's not this type of extremely gratuitous violence. You know, it's sometimes people want to see that.
I mean, it has scenes like the scene where, like I love the fact that John Wick, they finally do it. I mean, I've heard other films do it, but the first movie I remember ever doing this in was John Wick 3, and that's like, you know, you see it oftentimes in action films where there's like, typically the bad guy has like a knife and he's about to stab the good guy in the eye or the face, and somehow the good guy gets out of it. In this movie, they do it reverse, where John Wick's gonna stab the guy in the eye. I think he does it twice, and then he actually does it. Like, he overpowers the guy and stabs him right in the eye, which is brutal. You don't. I can't remember ever seeing that before.
But it's brutal. It's so beautiful too. It's really balletic in the choreography, and I feel like I think, wasn't the director of this movie? Isn't he like a cinematographer or?
I think he was in a stunt. I think that and Stuntman.
Yeah, he was a stuntman for Keanu Reeves, right?
Yeah, where he worked on The Matrix. I know that for sure. And I think he was a stuntman. And yeah, I mean, a heck of a journey for that guy. I mean, now, he's attached. I looked on his IMDb, or one of my IMDb Pro account last night, and I looked at all the things he's attached to now. I mean, he's attached to a lot of things. That he's attached to, obviously, the Continental show that they're making. I think it's on Starz. But then there's like several other things. I mean, I would not be shocked if he ends up directing like a big budget superhero film, or a big budget, whatever. I don't know exactly what, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did it.
We'll probably offer him one.
Can you imagine?
I could see that.
What would it be? Well, I guess I could see if they're doing like Iron Fist. Yeah, that there's like that Marvel hero with it's like Kung Fu or whatever.
Yeah.
I could see them having him do it.
I don't know if he has to be exclusively
Marvel.
Like just martial arts in general.
Oh, yeah,
he's, I think he's just capable of doing great action sequences.
Oh, that's a good point.
Really stunning stuff. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was gonna change the topic about So what do you think about the Star Wars numbers of?
Yeah, can you read them again?
All right, so basically, Star Wars Episode 1, it opened at $64 million. Domestically, it altogether made $474 million, and it made $1 billion worldwide.
64. I mean, that seems low even by like 99 standards, right? Or is that? And you said, I know it's the highest grossing movie of that year, but it just doesn't seem like a lot. Maybe I'm just looking at it through today's lens.
Well, I mean, didn't Spider-Man 1 that came out in 2002, right?
Yeah, but it was like 115.
And that's I'm trying to compare it. So Spider-Man 1 opened at almost $50 million more than Episode 1.
Yeah, because I mean, at the time,
came out 2 years later.
I know now we look back at it and it's like, oh, Episode 1 was incredibly maligned and people did not like it. But I think, I mean, there hadn't been a new Star Wars movie since, was it 1983 when Return of the Jedi came out? Like that. So there must have been a lot of pent up like want for the movie. And I mean, I recall seeing it in theaters. I don't remember seeing it like opening night, or I was too young to go to a midnight screening. So I don't know what that fervor was like, but the number just doesn't, to me, without knowing the narrative or the context of it, it doesn't seem like a Star Wars like number after like that long of a gap.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, one thing that is crazy though is that the amount of money ended up making domestic anyways, though. Like, so it made $410 million after its opening weekend.
It's got the legs.
Well, I mean, that's another thing too. Again, like what you mentioned, a lot of people, they dump all over Episode 1 and they say how bad it was, but at the time when it was in theaters, obviously people didn't think that. I mean, if you were to adjust those numbers, I mean, I don't have the adjusted numbers in front of me right now, but I mean, if you adjust those numbers, and especially if you account for the fact that how many theaters it was in and everything like that, and the fact that internationally it would have made even more money, it probably would have grossed more than Episode 7, don't you think?
Opening weekend?
No, just worldwide.
Just total? Oh.
Yeah, if you adjust for inflation,
I don't know, that'd be interesting
IMAX
to look
3D.
I don't know. See, I think we should try to find the adjusted number, because it just doesn't seem like it did. I mean, Episode 7 opened at what, 257?
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know if the dollar amount would be that drastically different. With inflation, unless inflation's a lot worse than I thought.
Alright, so
you looking it up?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. So it actually doesn't surpass Episode 7 domestic. So Episode 7, adjusted for inflation, is the 11th highest grossing film all time domestic, and it should be noted right now it's number 1 unadjusted. And that's at $974 million. Episode 1 would be $813 million, adjusting for inflation today.
What number was that?
It's at number 18.
Wow, that's pretty good.
I mean, if we're talking about raw ticket sales, it actually sold more than Endgame as of this moment right now.
Well, Endgame still got a little bit of run left in it, but yeah,
it does.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the movie played for like 9 months in theaters, right?
That's true.
So that's a pretty good run.
It is. I mean, Episode 1, I mean, after looking at the chart, I mean, it's the third, I mean, when you adjust for inflation, it's the third highest grossing Star Wars film ever. No, actually, never mind, it's number 4. Return of the Jedi is just 2 above it. Actually, no. Empire Strikes Back is there too. I guess it's like put in the middle of the pack.
That seems the right placement for it. I don't know why people hate the movie so much.
I mean, it's only, in terms of box office revenue, it's only behind the original trilogy and Episode 7.
Yeah.
So it's higher than what, five different Star Wars films has made more money than?
We're counting the spin-offs here.
Yeah. Rogue One and Solo and Episodes 2, 3, and 8.
So it's 2, 3, and 8.
2, 3, 8, and then 2 spin-offs.
But that's still surprising to me, just because of... So you ended on Return of the Jedi, and we're going back now. I mean, people knew it was a prequel. It was how Anakin came about. That seemed like really tantalizing. Why wouldn't it have... Maybe it's because of... Maybe it's because of how the movie actually was.
Yeah, that could have been.
So probably, but it wasn't front loaded because you said it only made 64, but it went on to earn 400 and
it made another $410 million after that.
That's interesting. I wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was watching actually at James' house. There was that. Oh my gosh, I don't know the name of the show. The spinoff of the Goldbergs. There's a spin-off show of that. I only watch over at his house, and like there was an episode because I think that show takes place in '99, I think. And there's an episode where like they go to watch Star Wars and they try to convince the jock gym teacher to go with them to watch episode 1. And like after the film's over, he's like totally trashing it, but like real criticism, not just like, oh, this is stupid, dorky, people fighting lightsabers. This is more like, what about this and what about that and why was all this Trade Federation talk? Like real criticism that people actually have of the movie. And the guy kind of says, at the end, he's like, you try to ruin Star Wars for me, because the guy was like a huge fan.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, obviously for the two of us, we were born after the original trilogy came out, so we could only really watch it on VHS when we were kids and DVD and stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I was a kid, I remember watching episode 1 and I thought it was fine. Like I liked the lightsabers. I remember being a kid and having toy lightsabers, and
I think the movie gave you, I think, the best lightsaber fight in the whole franchise.
Yeah,
I think
there's no
Darth
doubt
Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, I think that's like the best fight scene, right?
Oh, I agree. Especially at that. I mean, if we're comparing it to anything from the original trilogy. I mean, I don't know the last time people saw the original trilogy, but I watched the fight with Darth Vader and Luke at the gym a couple weeks ago, and like that fight is very slow paced.
Yeah, it's slow. Yeah.
I mean, which is fine. It's probably more realistic, but you're right. The Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon Jinn Obi-Wan, that like there's flipping but it's not too over the top CG yet. Where
just I don't the music. I mean, Duel of the Fates, right? It's the track name that John Williams wrote. It's like some of the best in Star Wars. It's second, in my opinion, to the greatest John Williams composition of all time, which is the love theme from episode 2, which is a very controversial opinion, but as it turns out, the correct opinion.
I feel like with episode 1, I think maybe some people look at the prequel trilogy now, and maybe it as not of a bad light as it did before the new Disney Star Wars films. They're still not very loved, but I think people can maybe agree that Disney's not any better for Star Wars. I don't know.
Well, but ultimately what it did was it expanded a lot of our understanding of what that universe is like by showing stuff like the Trade Federation, by showing like Coruscant and Naboo. Like you didn't see. It just blew open the whole idea of what this actual universe was before. That's before George Lucas went in and digitally added scenes to the original trilogy and stuff for the re-releases. This was our first glimpse at this broader universe, and I think it was really interesting world building. If anything, it was different than the originals, and it got criticized for that. And then episode 7 comes out and it's too close to the originals, and people are criticizing that. Well,
and then episode 8 comes out and it subverts people's expectations because it's too different.
It's just back and forth.
And then everybody hated it.
There's never. Episode 8, I have a whole host of other issues with.
I don't like it at all either.
I agree. To rag on it just because it's the different or not the same or not the type of different you want, or what people are.
Well, I feel like with Star Wars, the thing that's interesting to me is, again, I'm not a big Star Wars fan per se, but I feel like with the Star Wars films, there's been 10 movies that have come out, right? If you include the 2 spinoffs. I feel like there's really only 3 that are universally agreed upon and beloved. The original trilogy. I feel like, I know a lot of people liked Rogue One, so I would say that's maybe near Universal. And episode 7, I know is, at least at the time when 7 came out, that was near Universal like. But now, I don't know, because a lot of the people that hate the sequel trilogy, I guess they call it, episode 7 onward, a lot of them hate the prequel trilogy, and obviously a lot of people hate the current films going on. And it's really interesting to me that, you would think that there'd be more beloved films in the franchise, because really, I only think there's really 3 that people really, really love and talk about. Even like Rogue One, I don't hear people saying how much. I thought a lot of people said they really liked it. I never heard anybody say they absolutely loved it or it was one of the greatest films ever saw.
But those 3 happen to be like some of the most beloved and classic films of all time. So it's enough to sustain whatever this is until well into the future, obviously, because it's still running on the backs of people's nostalgia and love of those original movies and characters. So
Oh, you're right. But, I mean, it'll keep doing that too.
But I just think Episode 1 in particular gets a bad rep. I mean, yeah. I think Darth Maul, this might be a hot take, he's probably the best villain in Star Wars. Not in terms of his impact on the story, but just in terms of his design, and in terms of his like fighting ability. I mean, he was fighting two incredible Jedi pretty much like at their peak. They weren't
especially Qui-Gon Jinn's peak for sure.
Yeah, and when you have the spry and young Obi-Wan, yeah, he was maybe not as skilled, but he had all the energy in the world, and there's two of you, and so
he had a good death too, getting cut in half.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, and I don't know too much about the extended universe and like the Clone Wars or Rebels or whatever, but I think they
do bring
further explored his character there and sort of rounded him out. So I really like Darth Maul.
I mean, the next big villain in the prequel trilogy is Count Dooku.
Yeah,
he's just some old guy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, by comparison, there really are a few who compare. I'm redundant there, but there are a few villains who can match like his intensity. And I mean, it did a lot of stuff well. I like battle droids. I know people. I like the way they look. You know, I think they're funny looking. They kind of serve. I mean, it makes sense then why these guys were so kind of useless in battles that they go to the stormtroopers. So that kind of makes sense. It's the first time we see like the Jedi Council, right? Yeah. I mean, it introduces this idea of here are all these other Jedi, and here's what they could look like. They're not just Obi-Wan. They're different alien races. They're Samuel L. Jackson.
And what an interesting casting that was.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't Jimmy Smits among them, or am I thinking of the wrong? That's not right.
Know.
He was a politician. He wasn't a Jedi. But
it's crazy. I mean, Samuel Jackson is only like 5 years removed from Die Hard 3.
Yeah. But it did a lot of stuff. Well, pod racing was cool.
Pod racing was cool.
Yeah. So everyone out there, stop trashing Phantom Menace. It's a good movie.
I mean, I remember being a kid. Like, I remember I was in like elementary school. I remember there was some kind of like Halloween thing where people could dress up, but for whatever reason, I think we did like a fire drill that day because I remember like everybody doing some kind of drill and like people were dressed up as Star Wars characters. I remember a couple girls dressing up as Padme or whatever, Queen Amidala. Yeah. And I thought, like, even at the time, I was like, as a little boy, I was like, wow, like, that's a very elaborate outfit.
Padme, yeah.
Well, I mean, there was Queen Amidala, which just got the white makeup and the crazy hair.
Oh, so they were dressed as Queen Amidala, like, not,
yeah, not just Natalie Portman is,
She's definitely huge in the cosplay world, maybe. I mean, it's a nice costume. It's very, like a lot of the movie, it's very vibrant, it's very colorful and well realized, and in its way, like the world is. You see the universe in its fully functioning form before, before everything went awry with the Empire. This is what it was like. It was prosperous, and I think it's interesting to see that. And then, you also have what I think people don't like Jar Jar Binks. I understand, but it does have one of the best characters in all of the Star Wars universe, which is Watto.
That was Anakin's slave master.
Yes. The the very That's what we'll call him.
Well, he was like an anteater with wings almost, right?
Yeah.
That's his appearance.
Yeah, he had a certain accent.
Yeah.
And he had a certain type of business. It all worked very well, I think. It played well in 99 and even better today.
Like you mentioned this earlier about the idea that it seems like John Wick 3 and Episode 1 almost seemed like they swapped eras. Like, let's say, I don't know the two guys from Game of Thrones. I forgot their names.
Benioff and Weiss?
Yeah, like, if they made a Star Wars film, like, because I think theirs is supposed to come out, like, 2022, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, if theirs is just like Episode 1, like, let's say you cut out the bad CG. Like, if they has a very similar tone to that and a very similar plot, how well do you think that movie would do?
If it's just like Episode 1, not very well. People didn't like Episode 1.
I mean, do you think people didn't like Episode 1 because of small things or big things? Because I honestly kind of feel like, you watch Episode 7 and, especially like Episode 8, and they just feel so doom and gloom, kind of, Like Episode 8 especially, like the color palette was kind of darker, and the whole overall plot just feels so, like it felt like the whatever resistance was so outmatched.
Yeah.
That it just seemed very like, oh man, like there's no chance they can win. Whereas episode 1, it kind of felt upbeat. You never really felt like, oh my gosh, like the Trade Federation is 1,000 times stronger than the Senate. Like it felt like a nearly even match. And I mean, outside of Qui-Gon Jinn getting killed, I mean, episode 1 kind of felt upbeat.
I mean, except for the whole slave thing, but
oh yeah. But then he wins his freedom, though. So then that's kind of...
Yeah, but so I think, I mean, why did... I don't think... I think people didn't like it because, well... The people who were most excited for that movie when it came out were the people who had seen the original trilogy, right? And loved it growing up their whole lives. So presumably a little bit older, and because of the fact that it is a little more lighthearted, and the character at the center of it, Anakin, is a child. You have a lot of childlike moments. I mean, Jar Jar Binks completely being created for the generation who was new to Star Wars, and maybe that was a good tact. I mean, I didn't hate him, but I mean, he wasn't my favorite. I didn't have a Jar Jar plushie or anything, but I didn't hate him. And a lot of stuff was a little childlike and not necessarily in keeping with the Star Wars that they knew. And then you also had Metachlorians, people I think were very upset about because it totally changed the entire notion of what the Force was, and yeah, and the stuff with the Trade Federation, I don't think nobody was interested in the politics of that world, even though I think it's interesting to note and to know. I don't know if it's interesting cinema, at least in a movie like that. And there's maybe other ways to show that, but whatever Benioff and Weiss are doing, there's rumors that it's going to take place during the Old Republic, right? So it could be, it could draw on some of the political intrigue, maybe the feudalism that they drew on for Game of Thrones. Maybe it'll be something more akin to that, and perhaps that's their wheelhouse. Hopefully, not to just show us, scenes of people orating in a giant wherever they were with the council, right? That was a pretty impressive looking room, but yeah, I can see why that's not necessarily compelling in a Star Wars movie. But
I mean, I feel like I like the overall idea though of a Star Wars film that feels a little bit more fun and colorful, and I mean, maybe we'll have to see what their versions of the movies, I mean, what they end up being, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like episode 1, yeah, it did kind of feel a little lighthearted, and I think that's fine. I mean, I remember I listened to an interview that George Lucas did not that long ago, or whatever. He was on a panel, and he was talking about C-3PO and R2-D2, and as a kid, I always kind of thought they were annoying, because like, oh, these guys are stupid. They're too. I didn't really like comedic relief.
Yeah.
Or I don't really like comedic relief in a lot of films like that.
You didn't like to laugh as a child, is what you're saying?
Well, I just thought they were just too childish, even when I was a kid. I was like, oh, when I was a kid, I didn't really like watching kid-related stuff, and I mean, he said something like on that panel where he was like, oh, Star Wars isn't this, it's not meant to be taken 100% serious. It's supposed to be, partially for kids, or it's meant for kids, and it's supposed to be kind of lighter. And in light of that, it's like, okay, that makes sense. Like, it makes sense why you had Jar Jar Binks, and it makes sense why you have C-3PO and R2-D2 the way that they are. I mean, George Lucas could have made them one robot that was a killer robot that could also talk and do random, robotic things to help him get out of situations, but decided to make him like that, I think, for a reason. And I think with the new Star Wars, I mean, some people say, well, BB-8 is comedic relief, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I mean, I don't really know if he is really doing a lot. I mean, I don't think he's to the same level as...
Yeah, he's not on the same level.
I mean, he's kind of a cute toy, basically. And that's how Disney looks at him.
He's great for selling products.
Yeah, he's great for selling products, and they brought in the Porgs or whatever to sell more.
Well, the Porgs were just use. I mean...
I mean, the Porgs just really didn't fit that universe well. I mean, that film was so dark, episode 8.
I mean, the closest equivalent, right, of the Ewoks, but the Ewoks served a purpose. I mean, they were fierce warriors. What did the Porgs do? Did they do something? I honestly don't remember episode 8. I've tried to block it out.
I mean, they live on that island with Luke.
Yeah. And
I know that Chewbacca was going to eat one of them.
Didn't he eat one? He ate one.
I think he was cooking one, and then a bunch of them looked at him like, no. Like, I don't know. They can't talk, so I think they were just kind of shuddering.
We're best raw.
But that guy was already killed, I believe. But
yeah,
I mean, so for that, it was like, wow, that's a really weird tone.
There were a lot of issues in episode 8. Episode 7 was a little.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little lighter, but episode 9 too. It also does, at least based on the one trailer so far, it feels very like adult still. Like it seems very, the color palette is so kind of doomy, gloomy a little bit. Like it doesn't seem like they're having fun.
Well, I think that's where that type of movie making is nowadays. Really, like big budget fare is oftentimes just very self-serious. I think it started with Batman Begins.
Yeah. I think The Dark Knight really.
Yeah, and then
like pushed it just so far where I remember there was like a 6-year period where I felt like every time I watched out of a blockbuster film, I thought like, wow, like that was depressing.
Yeah,
it looked sad, and
I mean, there's a reason the posters all look the same. Like, I think that Marvel has done a better job of mixing in like really lighthearted stuff.
Yeah,
with Guardians of the Galaxy, and you have moments of humor with Tony Stark. Is obviously just he brings that energy, so he's able to strike that balance of like he's some really serious stuff going on, but you're also going to make a joke about Rocket being a Build-A-Bear, and it works because of his performance largely and just what we know as that character.
I mean, I feel like outside of the Russo bros Marvel films, I feel like a lot of Marvel films are kind of upbeat. I mean, like you look at Thor Ragnarok, I mean, yeah, Asgard gets destroyed, but it's still very colorful, and there's still a lot of like fun stuff happening on screen.
It took them a while to get there, because look at the first two Thors. I mean, they were
far more generic.
And just the first one, especially with Kenneth Branagh, they were going for like this heavy-handed kind of Shakespearean experience. But I mean, there were funny parts of it when he got to Earth, and Thor's trying to acclimate to this world, like in the coffee shop, and he's like, I have another, and he breaks the mug on the ground. I mean, that stuff was kind of fun. But yeah, I think for a large part, movies nowadays, and after probably The Dark Knight, they all tried to veer toward that like really grounded. Even though the stuff is they're dealing with, the material is completely fantastical and should be. It's not for children. It's just maybe for people like who have an imagination, a broad imagination, whose minds and hearts are open to that type of levity and experience that's different from what we experience in real life. That's why people go to the movies, is to escape from the diurnal struggles. Why everything needs to be weighted by such heaviness and such, like you said, dark color palettes, and I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit of a drag. That's why John Wick is a good antidote.
Well, that's what I was going to say for even John Wick 3. And, people are going to say, well, look at John Wick. It's this brutal action film, and people are, brutally murdered in the film. But again, like if you compare that to action films from the 80s or 90s, I mean, the stuff that happened in those films, if you haven't watched an action film from that time recently, I mean, it's kind of easy to forget some of the stuff that's happening on screen. Like, for example, Lethal Weapon 2. They kill Mel Gibson's girlfriend right in front of his face. I mean, like, she's, or not, right, well, he sinks to the bottom of the water, and then she's right there, and like,
yeah.
And, Lethal Weapon 2, they tortured Joe Pesci to his whole face is a bloody mess, or like, you look at other action films, like, Predator, people getting, I mean, the brutality that happens there. I mean, if you look at a lot of the action films from the 80s or 90s, I mean, John Wick 3, although very stylistic and looks very cool fight-wise, the brutalities aren't that bad. I mean, especially, too, when you consider the fact that, like, you're not really hearing about characters like raping other characters. You're not hearing about, like a lot of torture. There's not really even any torture in at least John Wick's 2 and 3. I know John Wick 1, they torture Willem Dafoe to death.
Well, or did he kill himself? He kills himself, yeah.
But after being tortured, right?
He is being tortured, but then he goes out by his own hand.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I feel like John Wick 3, like, it does have a lot of fun parts to it.
The whole notion, John Wick 3, everyone in it and the people making it understand what it is. It's not they're not making like the Bourne Identity,
No.
which is another, like, there's a lot of great action in that movie too, but it's very serious because it's just very serious. John Wick 3, they know that this is what's the right word for it? Like campy. It's I don't know if that's the right word, but like, they just know it's absurd and
like high class camp almost.
They're just having a good time with it. Look at Lawrence Fishburne acting in this movie. He's totally chewing the scenery. I mean, he's having a great time because he understands what this is. You can be big and you can overact,
you can be the king of the bums.
It's called for because that's what this movie is.
Yeah, speaking of Lawrence Fishburne, I think he's only like 4 years older than Keanu Reeves.
Really?
Lawrence Fishburne looks like he's about a 78-year-old man.
Yeah. Keanu Reeves looks really good. Like, he looks very youthful for his age.
He does, but Lawrence Fishburne also really... I'll double check all these. I'm pretty sure he's not even 60.
That's pretty, pretty crazy. He's got to be older than that. Well, look it up, but...
All right, let's... Yeah, he was born in 61. He's 57.
How old? It's heavy living. How old is Keanu Reeves?
All right, let's take a look.
I wonder if it has to do with their, not just their lifestyles, but also just their, just how they see life. How they move through the universe and their oneness.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is 3 years younger.
His spiritual center is so much more pure that it manifests itself in this kind of vivacious exterior.
Yeah, those are all very good points. All I know is that, he looks a lot younger than Lawrence Fishburne.
Probably he also has a pretty good skincare regime, whereas Lawrence Fishburne, maybe doesn't take care of his skin. I don't know. That's interesting though.
If you were to show someone that didn't know Lawrence Fishburne that well, if you just said, "How old do you think this guy is on screen right now?" How old do you think they would say?
I thought maybe mid-60s, probably in that range. Which is weird going back even to like The Matrix, because they're only 3 years apart.
Yeah.
But he really does look like, the wise older man to Keanu Reeves is like
young guy.
Young, like 20-something. Yeah. What the heck?
Yeah, because Keanu Reeves was like 30 at The Matrix then.
Yeah.
Because Keanu Reeves is 54 now.
Maybe it's...
Yeah, he's in his like mid-30s.
Maybe it also has to do with just Lawrence Reeves... Who's Lawrence Reeves? Lawrence Fishburne's... I'm combining their names. Yeah. Lawrence Fishburne's just general gravitas as an actor, I think. Because I think of Lawrence Fishburne, the first thing I think of is... Boys in the Hood, and just that father character, and being that character, that mentor who's going to give you the words of wisdom and try to steer you in the right direction, and that's kind of what he does in The Matrix also. So maybe some of it's that my framing of him through that type of role, that type of character that I've often seen him as.
The only films that I can think of, or the things I think of when I think of him, are Boys in the Hood, Matrix, John Wick, and Blackish. And all of those, he's plays the older guy giving out advice. I haven't watched a ton of them in Blackish, but I know he's the main guy's father, right?
Yeah, he's not in every episode,
but isn't he kind of giving out like advice, and
he's
kind
just
of like...
that's
not like his only role, but
he's a little boisterous as an older man. He's
okay.
Kind of kooky grandfather. Has Lawrence Fishburne ever played a leading love interest in a movie?
I feel like he was in a rendition of Othello from way back when.
Okay, but that was probably on a stage, or was that in...
I think he was in a film version.
I think I remember watching fantastic Othello. Was he also King Lear? I feel like I just remember him doing Shakespeare, which he has that gravitas. Can you imagine Keanu Reeves in Shakespeare?
Yeah, Keanu Reeves in Shakespeare probably looks something like Keanu Reeves in the Dracula film.
Or wow. Or like even in The Devil's Advocate, you see Keanu Reeves, and just not great casting. Totally blown out of the water by Al Pacino, and doing his absolutely... That's like the peak of Al Pacino's insanity on screen is in Devil's Advocate. And Keanu Reeves is just like he's in the middle of the storm,
Definitely Keanu Reeves. I feel like he was better in other 90s stuff like Speed and Point Break, and even like Johnny Mnemonic. He's stuff like that kind of like these action type of things.
Yeah, he's great in those movies.
And here he is, what, Speed or Point Break, they came out like early 90s? I think Point Break came out first.
I think so. And Speed was like 94.
So here we are, almost, 25 years later, 27 years later, he's still in these action films.
Yeah, and it's not like, because you had like Bruce Willis go away, and he came back with like Die Hard 4. Yeah. And, but that wasn't as successful, I feel like, and I didn't buy it as much. For some reason, Keanu Reeves just feels like he never left. Like there's been, like when Matthew McConaughey had his, McConaissance, and he started to come out and do all these movies, I think maybe he had aged out of the leading man in the romantic comedy roles, either aged out or he just didn't want to do them anymore because he had higher ambitions. And then So he kind of reinvented his career, but that's sometimes what you see is happening is people reinvent themselves. Keanu Reeves didn't reinvent himself. He just literally went back to what he was doing 25 years ago. Just as if he had never left. And people are just like, yeah, I like that guy. I want to see more of him.
I mean, because I think there's only 5 years between... It's either 5 or 6 years between the day the Earth stood still to John Wick 1. And I feel like you're right. Like, in that middle time, there was like that Ronin movie, I think. Where he's like a samurai. I think he did a couple other weird ones, but...
Street Kings.
Oh my gosh.
Was it Street
Forrest
Kings
Whitaker in that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's a cop movie, right?
Yeah. You know, he was in Hardball.
I liked Hardball.
That was a decent movie.
You know, I liked that as a kid. Like, I watched it several times. It had that guy. Oh my gosh. Was it the guy from Winter's Bone? Is that the guy that's like
Jennifer Lawrence movie?
Yeah. Isn't that guy his bookie or friend? Remember he had that friend?
Oh, you're talking about John? Is it John Hawkins or John?
That could be it. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. Me, you, and everyone we know.
Okay, yeah.
Let's just say it's
kind
that
of
guy.
like he kind of a small guy, looks a little bit like kind of like a ratty personality.
Yeah. What is? There's another movie that he's in like as an ensemble. It's a bigger. Man, what is the movie I'm thinking of? Where he's like a guy that comes in. He's like a father. And he's got to make a decision whether he wants to... It's not Armageddon, but it's like Armageddon. Was he in The Perfect Storm?
Ooh. Perfect Storm, that's the boat one with George Clooney and John C. Reilly and Mark Wahlberg.
Diane Lane.
Yeah, I think he is in that movie.
Was he in that movie?
I think he was.
Man, I gotta...
Yeah, whoever that guy is. All right, well, I guess let's jump to the cast swapping.
Okay.
So who do you got for some of these cast?
Well, why don't you start? I'll follow.
Right, so I got. Well, I guess I'll do for the guys being into Star Wars. So I have Obi-Wan being Keanu Reeves. I guess it's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence Fishburne as Qui-Gon Jinn, especially. Imagine 1999. Lawrence Fishburne as Qui-Gon Jinn.
Okay.
I think that'd be a little easier to fathom. I have Ian McShane as Yoda. Now, I feel like you could do actual Ian McShane, the actual person, and he's not Yoda, or he's called Yoda, but he's exactly the same he is in John Wick, just that kind of persona. Or he could voice Yoda, so I can go either way. And then for Darth Maul, I have that Japanese assassin guy. Now, what is he from? Like Top Chef?
Yeah, he's in. He's like the host of Iron Chef America.
Oh, that's what it is? So he's not a martial artist then by...
I have no idea. I mean, he looks like... He might be. He looked pretty good doing... There's got to be a reason that he got cast in that role. Other than, like, why would... It was weird for me to see him in it. I've never seen him in another movie.
I thought what was weird about him is that I feel like he doesn't come into the movie until, like, 45 minutes in. And then he's a prominent character for the rest of the movie, I felt like. That was just really weird that he kind of comes in like that, though.
Yeah. I don't know.
So, I mean, I feel like if you swap it, like Liam Neeson as Lawrence Fishburne's character, the king of the streets.
Yeah, I see Liam Neeson as, like, the manager of the Continental.
You see him being Ian McShane's character? I could see that as well.
Yeah.
But it's also be weird to have Liam Neeson in an action film and him not fighting.
Right, but
him not doing action.
I feel like if it was Liam Neeson, they would make him have action scenes. But because they have Ian McShane, he's probably written into his contract. He's like, I'll do these movies as long as I remain stationary in absolutely every scene.
Like at the end when the super elite whatever guys come in there that are only elite because they're in that heavy bulletproof vest outfits.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, like, wait, is Ian McShane just gonna sit down on this couch in the safe for the entire fight? And he did. No one even comes near him.
He's not a fighter.
Like, I thought there was going to be a scene where at least one of those guys was going to, like, sneak into the vault and then Ian McShane would have to kill him. They don't even do that. Ian McShane, like, he's barely even walking in this
That's what I'm saying. He's just sitting down
or, like,
the whole
just
time.
standing still for 5 minutes, like, when that one, the arbitrator or whatever, when she's like, oh, like, he's dead, whatever his name is. And he makes Shane to stand there. It's like, yep, he died, blah, blah, blah. And then, at the end, when he shoots John Wick, he's barely moving again. He's just standing still or sitting. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess he would probably... I think the guy that does Darth Maul, I think, my gosh, what's the guy's name? Like Ray Park or something like that? I think he's a martial artist in real life. So I feel like he could replace the...
You could replace the Iron Chef guy?
Yeah, I think he would probably be...
Mark Dacascos, that's his name.
That's the Iron Chef?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he's not the Iron Chef. He just
he
announces the winners.
Is he the guy that like yells loudly at the beginning? Does he do that?
Yeah.
Oh.
He says, "And now I say unto you in the words of my uncle," whatever he says. I think it's like a la cuisine or something like that.
Oh, but he doesn't like scream or anything.
He does. He does scream that line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for like a long time, right?
As far as I know, honestly, I haven't watched that in a while.
Oh,
but
okay.
I don't know if he's still doing it. But that's definitely where I know him from.
It was nice as a breath of fresh air to see Halle Berry in a movie.
I thought so too, actually, and I thought she was like really believable in her action scenes. If they were gonna do a spin-off with one of these characters, she might be a good choice because she was really good. Yeah. And she like Keanu Reeves just doesn't age. She looks incredible.
I also feel like the two of them, probably because they've known each other for 30 years. I feel like they actually know each other on I can believe that they have chemistry, Keanu Reeves and Halle Berry. Well, I feel like. There's no way they don't know who each other are somewhat. I mean, they both came up in the industry early 90s.
I know. I mean, I'm sure they run into each other. I just feel like Keanu Reeves doesn't really leave his house a lot.
I can also believe that too. Yeah, I mean, I guess if Halle Berry, if she was in Star Wars Episode 1, I guess she'd be by default Padme.
I've got different casting than you on this.
Who
do you have as Jar Jar Binks?
Oh man, I feel like there's not a lot of goofy characters in John Wick 3. Unless you wanted to radically change it. I mean, I got
mine.
Who do you have?
Jar Jar Binks?
Yeah.
100%, no question in my mind, and it would be fantastic. Boban Marjanovic.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
Boban.
It make Jar Jar Binks a lot more menacing.
He can do everything. And
too bad he had to the postseason. Too bad. I don't even think he played that. When Joel Embiid could barely move in Game 7.
Yeah,
Boban was just watching on the bench. My legs are fresh. For some reason.
That's Brett Brown's gonna have to contend with that.
Joel Embiid was walking around like he was in quicksand in Game 7. But yeah, I could see that. I think he'd be good as that.
Yeah. So mine for who did you have as you had Keanu as Qui-Gon as
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and then Lawrence Fishburne as Qui-Gon.
Yeah, I can. Keanu Reeves would have to be Obi-Wan, though I don't know.
And then probably Ian McGregor as John Wick. I can't. It's also really hard for me to believe Ian McGregor as John Wick, though.
He doesn't have that. Yeah, he doesn't. I think it would be a totally different character. I really like Ewan McGregor. It'd actually be interesting to see him do this type of action movie.
I feel like he'd probably almost play it off almost like James Bond.
Maybe a little too suave.
Yeah, he'd probably be suave and obviously very British.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he could do an American
British,
accent.
Right? Or is he
I think he might be,
or Scots,
Irish or something.
Yeah.
But he would be good. You know who you didn't cast? Who is Anakin?
Oh yeah.
And I think the only choice is the dog.
The pit bull that John Wick has.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the performance would at least be on par, if not better.
I like that kid in Jingle All the Way.
No, he's atrocious in Jingle All the Way, but it works for that movie because the whole movie, it's just in keeping with the rest of the movie.
But I feel like maybe he works in Jingle All the Way because he feels like an actual real kid you could know.
See, I don't think I don't think you can know anyone like that.
I mean,
I didn't.
I feel like when I was like when that movie came out, I feel like I knew kids that I thought were kind of bratty. Right?
They're definitely bratty, but they're also human. So
yeah, that's true.
I mean, he's an example because I often say this about Keanu Reeves. I really like Keanu Reeves, but he's not the best at emoting human feeling.
Yeah.
But it works for him, especially in the roles that he takes. But he carries it consistently to every role. It's like Point Break and Speed, or Point Break and The Matrix and John Wick are all very different movies, and of those three, he's probably the most charismatic in probably Speed. I don't. He was expressing a lot of feeling.
Yeah, he was.
With,
he was yelling
Jeff
and
Daniels
cursing and stuff.
Yeah. So, but he just always brings that level of like, is this guy really, fully awake?
Is he having an out of body experience?
Yeah,
the whole movie.
He's experiencing a different level of consciousness than everybody else around him, and it kind of gives him power actually on the screen. But the other end of that spectrum is Jake Lloyd, and it's not fair because he was a little kid, but. Man, yeah, it wasn't great. So I'm gonna go with the dog.
The dog over
long and short of it.
I can't even think of another film he did.
Yeah.
Other than those two, Episode 1 and Jingle All the Way. Was he ever in anything else big?
I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah, but no, you're definitely right about Keanu Reeves. Though. I mean, there are certain roles that I think he could be really great at. Like he definitely has. He's always Keanu Reeves, I feel like, in every movie that he's in that's good, at least. And I think that does work for him. I mean, I couldn't see him doing, I don't know, but then again, I don't know, he's doing the voice of a character in Toy Story 4, so...
Is he? Oh, yeah.
I think he's like an Evel Knievel type, so maybe that's supposed to be funny.
he's funny. He can be funny.
I mean, I don't know I couldn't see him... I couldn't see him, like... I don't know, maybe could you see him doing the role that Brad Pitt's doing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Absolutely not.
Really?
No, are you kidding me? Quentin Tarantino's scripts are all about words. Have you not seen any of these movies that he's in? Like that's words are not his strong suit. It's not what he does.
Did you watch the second trailer?
No, I haven't seen. I saw it came out today, but I'll check it out later.
I liked it. Man. Yeah, they definitely showed Brad Pitt more.
Wow, yeah. Keanu Reeves in a Quentin Tarantino. It's like, put Keanu Reeves in Quentin Tarantino, put him in Aaron Sorkin, and I have no idea what that would look like. It would be fascinating to see, but probably not great.
Maybe he could have done Charlie Manson, maybe.
Maybe. I haven't seen, they show him, right, in the new trailer.
I don't know if he talks, but the guy looks weird who's doing it. I don't even know what actor it is.
So, I think I'm going to change my answer on Obi-Wan casting.
Yeah.
Because if we're I think it would be interesting, very controversial, but if Halle Berry were Obi-Wan and Keanu Reeves were Qui-Gon.
Okay.
He's like the master,
Would there be like a sexual dynamic?
There was already.
In the original?
Wait, you didn't get that from Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor?
No.
There was something going on.
Well, back in the past, I mean, for the Greeks at least, when there was a master apprentice, I think a lot of times there was, a sexual dynamic.
Yeah, I think that was just implied, like, in in the story. Like, George Lucas didn't have to be really overt about it, but
so maybe that same thing was happening with Anakin and Obi-Wan later on.
Let's push the brakes on that one. We don't want to get into trouble
here.
He
does say that they were brothers. They were closer than brothers, I think.
What's closer than brothers?
Well, I guess that.
Brother lovers?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, well, this is turning into Game of Thrones a little bit. When Weiss and Benioff take over, maybe it'll go in that direction.
So when episode, whatever, Knights of the Republic or whatever, episode 10, whatever they call it, what would be the 20-year comp for that? Would have been a film that came out in December of 2002?
Yeah.
I can't even think. What was it?
I have no idea.
Man.
December 2002. I'm not like a savant.
Just remembering all these random movie dates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe was Castaway around that time? Or did that come out 2001?
I honestly don't remember.
Yeah. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Wasn't Lord of the?
That was Lord of the Rings one of those years. Yeah.
Was it?
I think Lord of the Rings didn't come out like 2001, 2, and 3.
2000.
Or is it 2001 and 2?
I think it was two. I think the Return of the King might have been two. Well, I mean, we could easily solve this, but I like speculating rather than looking it up.
Well, so did the Lord of the Rings? Did they follow the Lakers three-peat with Shaq and Kobe, or was they?
Well, no, because that was 2000, 2001, 2002.
So Lord of the Rings was 1, 2, and 3.
1 year behind. Were they in consecutive years?
I think I know they were consecutive years.
It was 2003 then, because I think that was. I always related to for some reason to the year that Mystic River came out. Oh wow! Because I remember Clint Eastwood being on the campaign trail. For Mystic River, not politics, and just really driving home the point, like, hey, consider awarding a movie with actual people. I feel like it was really insulting towards Lord of the Rings, because he was lobbying for his movie. Obviously, he didn't successfully do so, except Sean Penn won Best Actor. So,
man, so the 20-year comp for the Twin Towers, or Two Towers.
Yeah, it might be the Two Towers.
Might potentially be this new Star Wars. That's absurd.
Could be.
Wow.
Cross that bridge when we get there.
All right. Well,
I have you said Yoda was Ian McShane.
Yeah.
I think Angelica Houston makes a great Yoda. She kind of looks like him.
Yeah,
in puppet form, you know?
Oh, man. She is definitely looking old. I can't remember the last time I saw her in a movie either. There's several people in this movie. I was like, I can't think of the last time I saw Lawrence Fishburne in a movie, Halle Berry, or her. Like I know, obviously, I know they all three have been in movies, but I can't think of the last. I think the last one I remember Halle Berry in was something where like she works as like a 911 dispatcher.
Was that the movie Kidnapping that she was in? That was like 2 years ago.
Was that what it was called?
Kidnapped or
like she's helping, like somebody calls.
Yeah, I think that was it.
That was the last one I can remember her in. I can't remember her being in a movie before that. And Lawrence Fishburne, I swear, the last film, I know that he did the voice of Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four 2 that came out in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
But the last time I remember seeing Lawrence Fishburne on screen was Mission Impossible 3. Now, I might be wrong, but Mission Impossible 3 was 14 years ago.
He was in Contagion, the Steven Soderbergh movie from 2001. I'm sure he's been in a ton of stuff. He's always acting, but
I just feel like I can't remember him.
Oh, he was in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot he's in that.
Man. Oh, and he was in Last Flag Flying. That it was like with Bryan Cranston and Steve Carell. It was the Richard Linklater movie. I saw that.
Oh, but it was they're like old guys.
Well, they were veterans. I mean, they were they're their age. They're in their 50s and they're going across the country.
I feel like that was the film adaptation of that show that was short lived with Ray Romano and the guy from Quantum Leap. They're like old guys that are just not like old guys.
Yeah, I mean middle aged.
Yeah, I totally forgot he's in that one.
Lawrence Fishburne was in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice.
That's right. He's in I just keep forgetting he's in any movie.
He was in Man of Steel.
Yeah, he's a James Jameson of Clark Kent. Like he's Clark Kent's boss.
I never saw those movies, so
well, you saw Didn't you see Batman?
I saw. I have no recollection of that movie though.
Man, now I feel stupid for totally forgetting Lawrence Fishburne's in all those movies.
How dare you respect? He was in Passengers.
Oh my
Chris Pratt, Jennifer Lawrence.
I think Andy Garcia's in that too.
You know, he might be. It's hard to tell nowadays.
Who was I can't even remember him in that one.
I don't know, but there's only like two. So he's probably one of the guys that wakes up at the end of the movie because.
I feel like maybe he's like a captain of the ship.
Flashback or something. Oh, maybe he is.
I think at one point I do kind of.
Is he like a hologram? Because aren't they alone in that movie? And then,
or maybe he sacrifices himself. Like maybe they wake him up. He somehow tells them what to do to save everybody, and then he ends up dying. Maybe is that what?
I have like no. I honestly that movie. Yeah, that movie's not very memorable to me.
No,
I just remember. No, so Andy Garcia is the captain.
Okay.
And then the only character other than the Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence I remember is Michael Sheen playing the bartender, the robot bartender.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. We didn't need to talk about Passengers.
Well, all right. Well, I guess that's probably it for this one for this episode. Back to box office.
I think that's good.
So I guess next week's. I didn't look at the '99 release, but
no, it'll be Aladdin versus.
That'll be Star Wars.
Oh, it's probably gonna be Star Wars again. So we'll
we'll have to do something.
We'll do a different year, or we'll figure it out.
So maybe we can do Aladdin versus Aladdin, or Will Smith versus Will Smith.
Yeah,
like a '90s Will Smith movie.
It's gotta be we could do.
I mean, I guess a little spoiler alert for the Aladdin film, but one hot take I don't even know if it's a hot take, but one thing I will mention is that how does Will Smith, a guy who's a singer by trade, like that was his like first job, why does it look like in Aladdin he forgot how to sing? Like in the you got the Prince Ali. Did you watch the video?
No,
Prince
I didn't.
Ali?
You sent the clip. I didn't see it.
Like, I feel like the guy doesn't know how to sing anymore.
Is he singing or is he like rapping? Like
he's like
kinda
trying to like
hip hop
talk sing.
Yeah.
It's not even like any hip hop thing. He's just like trying to like talk sing, and it just like Robin Williams, who's not a singer, sounds so much better.
Well, did Will Smith ever really sing? He was always kind of doing that type of music, like singing that type of.
Yeah, but I feel like the first Prince of Bel-Air theme, I remember that. Or like getting jiggy with it. There's like there's some singing.
I don't know. Maybe we're overestimating his vocal abilities.
His overall talent.
Well, just his vocal. I mean, his talent could be just. He's a very charismatic person, so in his singing, maybe it was his charisma more so than his like. He's not going to go on, The Voice and win the contest, but
not with Prince Ali, he won't.
No,
that's for sure.
I'm really interested to see what that movie's like. I'm hoping it's not a disaster.
I kind of almost wish that it was, because then I would have more thoughts about it. Like if it's mediocre, that's the worst. Because mediocre films, forget about them.
I agree. You don't want these. I mean, Passengers. I mean, I
exactly.
literally remember nothing about it. So don't be a passenger, Aladdin.
Yeah, so either be old Aladdin, as good as that, or be horrible.
Yeah.
All right, well, definitely thank you guys for listening to this episode, and make sure to check us out next week.
Thanks.